before we, I want to show you so what kind of journey we're on FP&A within the Heineken organization. I think it's good to tell a little bit about myself. I'm 25 years in the finance areas in commerce and supply chain. Worked for a candy company, switched to Coca-Cola, and finally to Heineken. During my time at Coca-Cola, I more or less changed my role and placed myself a bit more outside the finance governance cycle execution to focus really on, okay, how can we optimize the process and how can we identify value potential, because it's if you're in the middle of a governance cycle, it's sometimes very difficult to spend enough time on that. So I was doing that. I continued doing that for Heineken. Heineken is a big organization, historically grown by acquiring a lot of breweries. So you can imagine that with so many people and different systems that are, it's like having a legacy of different systems, that it's not always easy to do FP&A in the same kind of way. And that's also something that we are trying to do within Heineken. So we're trying to have a clear standardized process of doing FP&A. So I'm heading the team of FP&A in the global process ownership department. It's a department within finance. We see business control as the function and FP&A as the activity. As said, we're optimizing the process and we're not part of the finance governance cycle execution. That's important. And we see ourselves as a linking pin of many teams. So with the business, with business control, but also with the transactional process, like order to cash, purchase to pay, record to report, etc. So, and many more teams that we have to align with. So I think that gives a bit of a picture of what I did, what I'm doing now, and how the team is positioned in the Heineken organization. So on the next slide, you see a picture of explaining what our ambition is. So this is our FP&A process ambition. So we try to balance and improve on all elements. So it has to do with process standardization, organization, but also automation. I think that's also a bit of the sequence that we try to follow. First, have clear what is it, how are we going to do it, with whom, is it positioned in the operation, or do we want to use a shared service center for that? And also, how can we automate? Next to that, for us, it's important to track our process. So to look at governance and performance. Rewards and recognition in the system is important, and people development, and especially people development is something that is important for FP&A, as it is not a transactional process. There are many ways to do FP&A. So that all comes down to this one ambition sentence, which we spent some time on to put this on paper, but I think it still makes sense and it's pretty robust, and we can work with this for the coming years. So on the next slide, you see that we have increased focus on how to do FP&A. I already mentioned it. It can be done in many ways, especially when you're a big organization with a lot of companies in that organization. It can be done in many ways. So we developed a framework, the Heineken FP&A framework. So very clearly answering 5 questions. So looking back, what did happen? Why did it happen? What we think will happen, but also the ambition, what we want to happen, and how do we make it happen? So that gives us a clear guidance on doing FP&A, and of course that's a lot of knowledge content, and it has to be done in combination with skills and behaviors. So we're partnering a lot with our learning and capability team to make sure that not only the knowledge content is properly covered, but also the skills and behaviors. So it's documentation on explaining how to do FP&A with rules, guidelines, use cases. It's for our business controllers, and it's for our FP&A experts in the shared service centers, but also people outside finance who are using FP&A data. Why we need it? I think it really helps us in making more crystal clear what are the business requirements, really reflecting what are the decision-making situations that we're trying to cover. And it helps us doing that in our design. So design for our processes, we should be organized, and also how technology should be designed and built. It helps us in deploying this. So making more clear, okay, how to use that data, how to use the technology. It gives you really tangible stuff to take with you in your organization, and it helps us in further optimizing the approach of tracking our FP&A maturity. So it helps us to really do this in a systematic way. Coming to that, on the next slide, we are addressing the PNVA maturity. So how to do that? So we are currently developing a maturity assessment model to extend our toolkit. We call it our FP&A toolkit. We are leveraging on the FP&A Trends documentation, the model that Hans was showing earlier. So that really helps us. We have a couple of things in there in the toolkit. So it's about process and organization, taxonomies, roles, different solutions that we have. Solutions, for example, to allocate our costs by customer, by product. We're tracking performance in our process health dashboard. The framework, which I mentioned, I explained on the previous slide, and then finally the maturity assessment. And the model that we see in front of us is really a model that will help us to identify the as-is, the different improvement areas, but also the plans to come to the target state. It's building on our dimensions, on our ambition dimensions, which I showed earlier. So our processes, the organization, technology, process performance, people and competences, and rewards and recognition. And what I said, we are really looking at, okay, what is FP&A Trends Maturity Model doing? How can we leverage on that, and how can we include that in our model and optimize as good as possible all the external views outside the Heineken organization? Especially on the process performance, I see that we have a lot of effort on that. I think that's something maybe also for the maturity model for FP&A Trends to reconsider, but of course it's a challenge. FP&A, it's not a transactional process, how to track that performance, but we make the attempt. So we want to deploy this globally, this maturity assessment model, having a 360 feedback. So really looking at the controllers, but also get the view from the business stakeholders. So to have that 360 view, we want to set ambition with it, and come up with a roadmap and action plans. And we want to connect the maturity with our process performance. So logically, the higher the maturity, the higher the process performance, but also the vice versa. So if we see high process performance, then probably there also should be high maturity. So this is something that is for us very valuable and good insights that we want to leverage. I think that is it from my side. So giving you a bit of insight in what we're doing in FP&A and how do we want to increase our FP&A maturity in our organization.